Hello, I'm Cressida Cowell and I am the author and the illustrator of the How to Train Your Dragon books, and also this is Once series. I illustrated and wrote that one as well, which is about magic. And I'm doing some Waterstones masterclasses, especially for Waterstones, because I'm at the moment the Waterstones Children's Laureate. And this masterclass is going to be on about creating character. When I'm writing, I'm always trying to make you feel that things are real. And I like books that move you. So I like books that make you laugh, sometimes make you cry, make you think, are exciting. But I try and do that with the characters as well. I try and move you with the characters. That's what I'm trying to do. And my books are a lot about growing up, particularly How to Train Your Dragon. But most of my books are about growing up and the relationship between parents and children. When I first wrote How to Train Your Dragon, I just had a baby. And there's a moment when you just had a baby and you think, oh my goodness, they're going to let me out of hospital with a baby. I know nothing about babies, so you start looking back to your own childhood and thinking about how you were brought up. So it really could have been how to train your baby. So I started looking back to my own childhood, and so the relationship between Hiccup and Stoic, I'm talking about Stoic's character here now, is really based on something true, which is my relationship with my father. That's my dad, me and my dad. And I love my dad so much. You can see that when I'm looking at him. I loved him so much. And I really looked up to him, but I wasn't a bit like him. And children aren't always like their parents, are they? And so with Hiccup and Stoic, I was creating a character where Hiccup is looking up at Stoic and admiring him, but he can never be quite like him, because I think that's a lot. Children often aren't necessarily like their parents, and so I put that emotion between Hiccup and Stoic. I put all that emotion of Hiccup wanting to be like his dad, but having to understand, and the moral of the story is that he has to be himself. And Stoic looking at his son and loving his son very, very, very much, but secretly sort of wishing that his son might be more like himself. And I think parents often think that, but it's not because we're sort of very conceited and we want our children to be like ourselves. It's because we want to be close to our children. And if they're very different, they can sometimes feel very far away. So Stoic has to learn that that Hiccup is different from him, but Hiccup is his own person, and Stoic has to learn to accept that through the whole of the How to Train Your Dragon series. And this is the first drawing that I drew of Hiccup and Stoic together, and this really sums up the whole of the How to Train Your Dragon series, really. It's about a boy and his father trying to live up to being like his father. That's the very first drawing that I ever drew of Hiccup, and the very first drawing I drew of Stoic. But I based it on something true, on my own dad. And that often happens with characters. To make them feel alive, you base them on something. They're not, Stoic is completely like my dad. My dad didn't have a big moustache, and they take on a life of their own. But it starts with something real. You've got to move. You've got to move in your stories. So it has to start. It has to start from something real. And so the characters in the stories often are, and I don't mean to make them like this, but they're often based on real people. These are the real people, the real children. When I was writing How to Train Your Dragon, I was trying to train these little three people. That's Maisie, that's Clemmy, and that's Zanny. And a lot of the emotion that you see in the characters come from the experience of me trying to bring them up. So when I'm drawing Toothless, or I'm doing conversations with Toothless, between Hiccup and Toothless, because Hiccup is sort of Toothless's parent, isn't he? I'm often recalling the conversations they have together, or often the conversations I was having with my children. That's Clemmy when she was about 2. Yeah. So you'll notice that a lot of the conversations, like at bath time, there'll be some, hang on, I'll try and read you some of the conversations that Hiccup has with Toothless. So, and you can see how I get it from the character from conversations that you might have with a 2-year-old. Here is, yes, I'll start with learning to speak Dragonese, because everybody loves that. Learning to speak Dragonese. Yeah, hang on. Here are some common dragon phrases to get you started. Nea quappa in a doosus fishu. So that means no pooing inside the house, please. So a lot of them, yes. This is an example of Toothless talking to me in Dragonese with the Norse translation below. Me has buckets to belly scream, which means I am very hungry. Me isna but is at the middling of the time. I don't care if it is the middle of the night. Me has oopla diladi gurgle, which means my tummy is rumbling like anything. So that isn't exactly a conversation that I might have had with my 2-year-old, but it's sort of inspired by that. Or kamikaze, for example. My daughters, you see, have this very long blonde hair that was very difficult to brush, and they were very chatty and very excitable, and I put all that into the character of kamikaze. So and Zanny, this is the little one, that's the little boy. Even though I started writing Hiccup before he was born, a lot of Zanny's character came into Hiccup as he grew older, because Zanny's a kind of hiccupy kind of a person. So I take the character real people, bits of real people, and Czar, for example, might be based on, this is a character from Wizards of Once. Czar, this is Czar. He's not like Hiccup at all. He's the kind of kid, I love Czar. He's the kind of kid who acts first and thinks later. We know that kind of kid. And that was based on kids I remember from school. Boys who were always getting into trouble, who meant well. Czar means well, but he's always getting into trouble because he acts first and he thinks later. So that goes into everything about Czar. When I'm trying to build his character and introduce him to you at the beginning, I give you a whole load of examples of how, let me just see, this is when you first meet Czar, of the how Czar acts first and thinks later. Czar was the most disobedient boy in the Wizard Kingdom in about 4 generations, and forbidding things only encouraged him. In the past week, Czar had tied the beards of 2 of the eldest and most respectable wizards together when they were sleeping at a banquet. He had poured a love potion into the pig's feeding trough, so the pigs developed mad, passionate crushes on Czar's least favourite teacher and followed him around wherever he went, making loud, enthusiastic squealing and kissing noises. So you can see how I'm building Czar's character by making you laugh as well about the naughty things that Czar does, but also how he means well, but he just gets into trouble all the time.